Back in May of 2022, the music world was just completely rocked by this incredibly brutal act of violence. Today, we're going to break down the assassination of Sidhu Moosewala, a really complex story of fame, revenge, and a culture that's kind of caught in the crossfire.
So this is the big question, right? How does something like this even happen? How does a global music superstar get gunned down in his car in the middle of the day? It's an act that silenced a huge voice and left literally millions of fans, from Punjab all the way to Canada, just demanding answers.
All right, to really understand what happened, we've got to go back. Let's go to that fateful afternoon in the Mansa district of Punjab and look at the last 30 minutes of Sidhu Moosewala's life.
Moosewala was just heading out to visit his aunt, a totally normal thing to do. But only about 10 kilometers from his home, that simple trip was cut violently short in what was clearly a meticulously planned attack. It was over in just minutes, but it changed everything.
The way this ambush went down was just staggering in its brutality. A Corolla sedan blocks his Jeep from the front, while a Bolero SUV pulls up from behind and boxes him in. Then they shoot out his tires. 6 assassins jump out and just unleash a storm of over 30 bullets. They left absolutely nothing to chance.
So this wasn't some random act of violence, not at all. The motive here was deeply personal. It was rooted in a nasty gang rivalry and, really, a thirst for revenge. It all goes back to August 2021 and the murder of this man, Vicky Mindukahara. Now, he was a close associate of a really infamous gangster, Lawrence Bishnoi. And a guy like that getting killed, well, that was never, ever going to go unanswered. It basically set the stage for deadly revenge plot. And here is the critical connection. During the investigation into Midokhar's murder, this name, Shaganpreet, surfaced. He was an acquaintance of Moosewala, and the Bishnoi gang became totally convinced that the superstar had used his influence to help Shaganpreet escape to Australia. Now, whether that's true or not, it didn't really matter. That belief put a huge target squarely on Moosewala's back. And this right here just perfectly illustrates the motive. There was no mystery about who was behind this. Just hours after the killing, associates of Lawrence Bishnoi were all over social media, proudly, publicly claiming responsibility. They framed it as justice for their fallen brother. So, you've got this massive, complex conspiracy. How on earth did police even begin to untangle it? Well, you're not going to believe this, but the entire case cracked wide open thanks to a single, tiny clue that was left behind in the chaos. Police found the getaway Bolero ditched about 13 kilometers from the crime scene, and inside, they found a simple fuel receipt from a gas station. So, they checked that station's CCTV footage, and boom, there's their first clear image of one of the shooters. That little piece of paper was the one thread that police pulled to unravel the entire plot. And from that one clue, a massive, multi-state police operation kicked into high gear. 3 of the shooters were arrested. 2 others were killed in a long firefight with police. And the last assassin, he was caught months later trying to sneak across the Nepal border. Within about 100 days, all 6 were off the streets. But, a killing like this, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. To really get it, you have to look at the world he was living in. This dangerous intersection of Punjabi music culture, regional politics, and this ever-present threat of violence. And get this, just 2 days before the attack, Moosewala's security detail had been reduced by the government, from 4 guards down to 2. That political decision, combined with his own choice to travel without those guards or his bulletproof vehicle that day, it just left him tragically, horribly vulnerable. And then there's the gun culture. I mean, look at this number. 10% of all of India's licensed firearms are held in Punjab, a state with only about 2.3% of the country's population. That is just staggering. And that's not even counting the illegal weapons. It's a reality that Moosewala himself often talked about and was criticized for in his own music. Which brings us right to the core debate around his legacy. To his millions of fans, he was a cultural icon whose music gave a voice to an entire generation. But to his critics, he was this controversial figure whose songs and videos glorified the very gun culture that ultimately took his life. So the question is, was he just a reflection of that culture, or was he one of its creators? Because when you strip away the gangs, the guns, and the global headlines, what you're really left with is a story about a profound and irreversible human loss. For his fans, all these strange, unsettling coincidences have only added to the mythology around his death. The title of one of his biggest hits was 295. He was killed on May 29th, 295, and he was a huge fan of Tupac Shakur, who, as we know, was also murdered in his car. It's all become part of his tragic legend.
Because while the world was debating his art and his legacy, a mother and a father had to bury their only child. A young woman was robbed of her future just months before her wedding. The real impact is always measured in the grief of the people left behind.
It just leaves you with this really heavy question, doesn't it? When art, fame, and violence all crash into each other like this, who is it that ultimately pays the price? It's a question that lingers long after the gunshots have faded, forcing us to think about the true, devastating cost of this tragedy.